What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Cervantes podcast. Joining me today to continue the colorism discussion, the history of colorism, both in the United States and around the world, stereotypes, and how we as a Black community can put an end to it, is health science major and community health minor, resident assistant, and head diversity peer educator for intercultural engagement and inclusion at Hofstra University, Triniti White, an international relations major, co-photo director for the Renegade Magazine, studying at Syracuse University, Andrew Alipui. Colorism has driven Black American beauty standards for centuries, for example, the brown paper bag test, and has also been found to be a determinant of life chances in larger society. Individuals with lighter skin tones have a higher socioeconomic status, have shorter prison sentences, and are less likely to be punished in school. Colorism has real consequences, thus we must address how colorism works in our everyday lives, our activism, and our advocacy work. I wanted to ask you guys first, when did you first realize you had privilege as a light-skinned Black person?
Sure. I think for me, it took a little bit of time because growing up as a very young child, I wasn't really aware of my skin color and my race and stuff like that, especially because I didn't really just some background. I didn't grow up in the United States until I was about 8. So I only started becoming aware of my status or my skin color, me being a Black person when I moved here. So before that, when I was about baby till when I was 8, I lived in the Philippines. And so for me, my parents told me now that there was times when kids would say stuff, but I didn't really notice it. I became much more hyper aware of it when I came here, where kids who were either in my first grade or second class would not necessarily say bad things, but just say stuff about me being Black. And I was like, oh shit. Then I was kind of, becoming more aware of it. I think me realizing the privilege of being a light-skinned or being a light-skinned person kind of came, I think, middle school. It became a whole thing of light-skinned people are more attractive, or light-skinned people are the face of Instagram and social media and stuff like that. And then I also just kind of noticed that when I was younger, teachers would kind of treat me somewhat differently. I was I was still a pretty decent, nice kid, I behaved and stuff like that. But in general, if I was in a group of kids, I was kind of given the benefit of the doubt almost. And anybody who's maybe dark skinned was treated slightly differently or punished harshly, or they had less faith in them as a student.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah, we see that all the time. When I feel if there's a group of Black kids and we're all being rowdy, I think we're seen as different. I think the darker skinned children will be punished harshly, like you said. I think, yeah, we see that young, and I think we see that in middle school, high school. Yeah, that's true. And what about you, Trinity? When did you find out about the term light skin privilege, and when did you realize you benefited from that?
Yeah, so I would say, I grew up in a predominantly white town in Connecticut. And so at first in school and everything, I was the Blackest kid that people knew. So from my perspective, it was I'm the darkest per se, right? Se. But then, okay, the sides that make me up, my mom's side and my dad's side. So both my parents are mixed. My dad, though, his side was the majority of our Black family members, coming in a lot of different shades, dark skin, brown, however you want to call it, a lot of mix of Puerto Rican and Black and whatnot, and just Blackity Black, right? That's what it is right there. And so basically, I didn't know any of that colorism type of stuff until they started saying things. Now, their base was, they're from the Bronx. And so they're from the Bronx, but then also other family members stem from, Philly and then the South. And we know with Southern culture and everything and whatnot, with certain comments that are made, oh, you would be in the house, or oh, you'd be outside type of stuff. And we would get those types of comments. And I'd be like, what are they talking about me in the house? Why are they saying that? They're going to be outside. I'm going to be in the house. Stop saying that. I didn't understand what that was at first. Because I said, in my town growing up, I was the Blackest person people knew. Little do they know there's a bigger world out there. So that would be my first instance, was with my extended family members, not my immediate, my cousins and my cousins' cousins and my dad's uncles and all of them. They'd be like, oh, you're light skinned. Oh, look at you. Look at your skin. Make comments like that. And I have dark skinned family members, they'd say the same thing. Other light skinned family members, they wouldn't really say much. I know kind of family members that were in the middle that were brown skinned, they'd be like, oh, like you're lucky. Say comments like that. And it'd just be like, what? Like, I don't understand.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, like I don't understand like what's going on. Like, okay, I'm lucky I'm gonna be in the house. Like, what? Like, like it doesn't make sense to me.
Right. No,
But
yeah.
then once I got to the middle school, because this was like elementary school, they were saying stuff like this. He'd be like, oh, your hair. I'd be like, oh, okay, like what about it? They're like, oh, you don't have like nappy hair. And I'd be like, yeah, I guess. Like, I don't freaking know. Like, sure.
That
But
texturism.
yeah,
That
exactly.
texturism conversation. Yeah.
And so once I got to middle school, and I started paying attention in class, and we started actually getting into some U.S. history, even though yes, in our schools today they don't really paint us the best picture or tell us the real stories. But from what I gathered and like learning about like slavery in the U.S. and whatnot, I understood my place. I understood that, oh, like this is why my other family members were kind of looking at me this way, or why they look at my mom a certain way, because my mom is very fair skinned, even though she's black and white as well. She is, I guess, lighter, some people would say, or she looks like she could pass more for Puerto Rican and whatnot. So people would then come to her and say those same things, because she grew up actually in she grew up in the complete opposite town of me. So she grew up in the town where she was known as like the white girl, and then I grew up in a town where I was like the black girl, even though we know kind of, you know, where that's coming from and whatnot.
Right. So your mom is black and white and she's super light, and your dad is dark skinned.
So my dad, he's like a brown. He's not dark skinned. He's like a brown,
Okay.
and it's like weird. Like all of our bodies have a bunch of different shades on them. Like his belly is like light skin, but then his arms are like dark skin. Like it depends.
That's funny. That's funny. No, but yeah, I think that's very interesting. Like how as like young black children, if you have like quote unquote good hair or nicer hair, looser curls, it's like, oh, like you're lucky, you're beautiful. If you're light, like it's the lighter you are and the closer to white you are, it's better. But then light skinned kids or biracial kids, they also get made fun of. Like I feel like Drake talks about that, like always feeling like he has to prove himself more, or like Mariah Carey. I feel like they feel like they have to, like black kids make fun of them. But then if you're dark skinned, it's like you're black, but then you're seen as like if you're dark skinned, you're seen as ugly, and then your hair is like, oh, it's unmanageable. So it's very interesting, and it's like we're all black. So why does it why does it matter, and why is there tension between dark skinned people and light skinned people? And then why are we upholding? It's like we're amongst our community, we're upholding white supremacy, you know, when we should be like not.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's almost like we're like how you're saying with like the, oh, I'm light skin, I'm dark skin, kind of putting each other against each other, upholding like that value of, okay, more whiteness is better. And it's crazy how it actually starts like within our own family members. Like the fact that I was like 4 and I had like my grandma saying this type of stuff to me, and like my great aunts and everything. Yes, older black people or older African Americans, however you might want to say it, are thinking this way, but because they tell it to us at such a young age, and then we're now growing up, okay, thinking, okay, lighter is better, okay, this is better. And same with like young men, and I know we'll get into that talk later with like talking about black men and everything, but starting from them from a young age, if they're darker skin, okay, now that's starting just self-hate, and it's starting within our own homes. That's terrible.
Yes. I think like it originated through like slavery and colonization, you know, and like lighter skin enslaved black people were seen as better and smarter and more beautiful. And then it's like it transitioned to like when we became like free and like citizens and like just out of slavery, we like carried that through. And it's like that's sad. It's sad that happened, and then we still see it through like social media, or like the way in which I feel like black men will talk about, when we talk about women that we are interested in, it's oftentimes lighter skinned women. And it's like, if it's a dark skinned woman, she has to be like super beautiful, like Bernice Burgos, like super beautiful. And like, why can't like Viola Davis or someone who, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, why does it have to be like a Instagram baddie for a dark skinned woman to be beautiful? Like that's weird, you know? Have you ever been made fun of because of your skin color by a black person or a person of color?
I uh that like thing about like the black men not dating black women, I've heard it so many times. Like it's like actually ridiculous. Like before I even knew how to handle that type of comment, because the thing is, it's always bothered me ever since I was a kid, like or kid, I guess, well, since I was young, like high school and all that. So I always hated that, but I didn't have quite the words or the vocabulary or like even necessarily the like self-confidence to like speak on that. Like if somebody's talking to me, like I've encountered so many guys, not even just black guys, but I mean black guys especially, of course,
Yeah.
but like white guys too, but like, people in general who like say they'll be talking to me about like a girl or girls, and then they'll be like, oh man, like I would never talk to her, she's too dark, or like they'd be like, or even just talking to a regular like a dark skinned guy, like or a black guy, and then we'll be talking about girls, and then he'll be like, I don't really like black girls like that, they be yelling too much, or they got this going on, or they got that, or like I prefer Spanish girls, I prefer white girls, and then I'm like, okay, so why? And then they're like, well, they kind of just listen more, or they just more submissive, or like they whatever, like all
Yeah,
these
no,
different
yeah.
reasons. And I always was like so annoyed by stuff like that. And like, at the time I didn't really know what to say. So I kind of just like ignored it, or just like, would change the subject. Nowadays, if it happens, I'm like, nah, I don't know. Like I challenge it. I'm like, why do you think that? Like, what makes you think that? How many girls have you met that are really like that? I try to like, push people to challenge themselves and think about what they're saying. But in terms of me being like made fun of for my own skin, I would say it happened. I don't know if you would say like this really seriously being made fun of. Like I don't really know if I would say it's that serious, but it's the jokes are like light skinned guys are soft, or like light skinned guys act like this, light skinned guys act like
I was gonna
that.
ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, those types of things. I don't know if it's how serious it is. Like I know it exists and like a lot of people experience it. And it's this idea of like the feminization of light skin. So like, when a light skinned woman is light skinned, it's like the perfect woman. And then when a light skinned man is light skinned, or like when a man is light skinned, it's kind of like he's not a full man. Like he's kind of like feminine.
Right.
Which kind of goes into like, how we talk about dark skinned women being seen as more masculine, or seen as more like,
Right. That's true. And it's
so
like
there's
where
that.
it's like I know where that comes from, but it's like, why are we like my
Yeah.
dad used to make jokes like he didn't like Drake at first. And
Yeah,
I was
because
like,
of that.
why? And he
Yeah.
was like he's light skinned, he's soft. And I never understood that. Like, why are we doing that to each other? And
Yeah.
where did it even come from? But again, it's colonization. It's the
Yeah,
beauty standard.
exactly. It's like that beauty standard. It's like, like I forgot the word. It's like gendered, uh, damn, it's something, it's like race. It's an intersection between race and gender, basically, where,
Okay.
like it's on a spectrum of like light is more feminine, dark is more masculine. So that's kind of where I've kind of stood, like when people like would joke about like either being soft or acting light skinned or something like that.
Did you
Or
feel like
like,
you had to be more aggressive because of that, or did it not really affect you like that?
sometimes, but I really don't subscribe to that stuff. Like I know who I am. Like I know I'm not like built like that. Like to be, acting somebody like some way I'm not. So although I was aware that like I was seen as like, soft or like less intimidating or like whatever the case was, I was just like, I can't really change it. Like I can't sit here and pretend to be something else. But yeah, like that type of stuff kind of was what the main thing was, like, either being soft or yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. I hope people like I hope Black people that listen to this, I hope they like really think about like the jokes that they make, or like how they tease their little cousins, or
Yeah. Oh,
why
that.
they not like a music artist for some reason. It's like
Yeah.
really think about that.
Right.
Yeah. Now in no way am I saying, okay, oh my gosh, being light skinned is so difficult.
That too. Let
No,
me just make sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Me and
not like,
Andrew are not saying that at
yeah.
all.
No,
Um,
yeah.
when it comes to different communities and how you're looked at, that's where kind of like the identity and your role kind of comes in place, trying to figure out, okay, where you fit in. It was difficult with finding my identity, being a light-skinned Black woman and being also biracial, in both communities, growing up with white people living in a majority white town. And then, like I said, being viewed as the darkest person there. But then, oh, let's say I go out with my dad's family, or we go to like the nearest city or whatnot, and I'm out with all these other kids and they're dark skin and they're like, oh, you're white. And it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, it's almost a culture shock in a way, because it's like, I was just the blackest person that some people knew. Now I'm like the whitest person these people are saying. And
it's like, where do I fit in?
Yeah.
And the whole then bringing into like the talking white type of situation and what comes along with that. Yeah, it definitely was frustrating. It definitely caused a lot of problems with me mentally.
I could imagine. That's tough. And I think like, sometimes, I hate to say it, but I feel like sometimes like in my family, the darker skinned people, they will like, oh, like they just need to shut up. Like, just pick a table. Like, you know how like, I don't know what table to sit at. And like my mom will be like, just pick a table. Like, it's not that serious. And I'm like, Mom, you have to understand that like, they're Black people too. And they might not go through what we go through as bad, but it's still a struggle. You know, and I think people don't understand that like the struggle might be less, but it's still something that you Trinity go through, and people shouldn't dismiss, especially people that are in your community, you know. And I don't want dark skinned people to be like dismissive of that experience, you know.
That's actually interesting, like, because also like something else too that kind of relates to it is like me also because I'm light skinned, I'm also African. So like my dad's from Ghana, my mom's from Angola. And so anytime I've ever gone home, especially to Ghana, because Angola is kind of different in the way that they see like race and like color and stuff like that. For them, like similar to America, being lighter skinned shows that you have like some sort of mixed blood. So it's like, you know, now you're here on the social hierarchy. Right. And in Ghana, it's the same, it's kind of similar, but like they look at you like almost like damn, you're white, like damn, that sucks, like you're an outcast almost, like you're here. And of course now you have lighter skin, so it's like they can clearly see they're either American or mixed or something like that. But then instead of them being like, you know, you're better than me, they're kind of like trying to take advantage of the fact that you're light skinned. So they think, oh, you're ignorant, so you don't know, you know, that they're gonna try and charge you more for stuff, or that's like interesting, you know, that type of stuff. So like you can go to a store or like a market and be like, oh, can I get, you know, something from the street, like street market, street food, right? And it's say it costs like maybe like $1. Now they're gonna start charging you $5. So like that type of thing also, it works against you because they see that you're like light, so they see that you're privileged, so they automatically assume that you'll be able to like you're naive. That they can finesse you, yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah, and like they think that you're easy to manipulate.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Now, have either of you guys dated outside of your race? And if so, were you nervous to date outside of your race?
So yes, I have.
Okay.
And yes, I was.
Okay. Why were you nervous?
So
where did it came from?
And I still do today. And it's kind of it's especially with being a Black woman. So not saying that, you know, we just have a lot of stuff going on, but you know, we just got a lot of extra with certain things that maybe a white woman doesn't have to deal with. For example, when it comes to hair products and like upkeeping your hair.
Right.
And that's kind of where I had the most difficulties when dating somebody who wasn't Black and white, or somebody who also just didn't also identify as Black. It made me feel like insecure because I was like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna wear a bonnet to sleep. Like, this is what
is that okay?
Like don't judge me. Or like, let's say I have weave in, like don't touch in my, like you're gonna feel a track, like stay back, like I'm not, like I feel insecure, like don't touch, like, or for, like something like, you know, sexuals happen, like don't pull my hair because if that shit comes out, we're gonna have a problem.
It's awkward.
Yeah, so it's like stuff like that. And so that's where I kind of find my differences coming along, because I'm not even saying with just like white guys, like I mean like Hispanic men as well, so like Puerto Rican men,
like non-Black Latinos.
Yes, exactly. Anybody who's just non-Black, all right? So just dealing with it on that part. And it's definitely different concerning just how we also approach our family members in different ways. Like say we're on FaceTime or whatever, and I'm talking to my mom or my dad, and like I couldn't have a boyfriend until I was 16. And if I did have a boyfriend, they couldn't be in like the house or anything like that. But like if I could get somebody outside of my race, like that person would tell me about their experiences, and they'd have like the girlfriend would be sleeping. They weren't black though. Or a black girl. There was it was like another Puerto Rican girl or whatever, a white girl, and they'd have like sleepovers and shit, like under
like there's more leniency.
Yeah. I didn't mean to curse. There's like more sleepovers and like everything under that person's house, and I'm just like, what? Like I would get my butt beat like to no tomorrow. Like that is not allowed. What do you mean you're having sleepovers at each other's house?
No, yeah, like the cultural,
yeah. So it's just like it's
very, that's interesting. No, yeah. And I'm sure a lot of Black women can relate, you know, because they're not used to bonnets and weave and all that, and my hair looks like this today, but it's gonna look different tomorrow. Like that's
or like even with like shrinkage, like, oh, your hair, like people will literally ask me if I cut my hair, because let's say I have it in braids like this and then I wear it out curly and then it's different. Like, oh, you cut? No, I didn't cut my hair.
It's just different
like
style.
This is what it is today.
Or shrinkage.
Like, and if I did, so what?
Right, you know,
so it's like why does it matter to you? Like at the end of the day, like it's what I'm doing, it doesn't impact you in any way. So
it probably feels weird when like a white man or just a man that's not Black, he's so surprised or intrigued by the versatility of your hair, and that probably feels like I'm not an animal, I'm not a, you know, like it's I'm a person. You know,
and you even get that, like not even just relationship wise, for like romantically, like even just like friendship wise with like other girls and whatnot who weren't Black. Like
can I touch your hair? Yeah,
I keep going back to being in a predominantly white town because that's how I experienced a lot of I wouldn't say it wasn't like discrimination, but where I experienced a lot of my microaggressions. All right, a lot of microaggressions towards me. People would be like I was asked in my high school, was I Jamaican? And this was by a teacher, a white teacher. I remember his name and everything. I won't say it, but I remember his name. I always will. And he asked me if I was Jamaican because I had braids in my hair. Because this is how when I was sitting at the table, right, the lunch table. I was sitting at the lunch table, right. I was minding my business. He's coming walking over. He was like, "Oh, hey, Trinity." I was like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Blah blah," and he was like, "Oh, are you Jamaican?" And I was like, "Huh?" Like I was really caught off guard. I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Cause the hair." And I was like,
what? I can't.
I'm Black. I'm not Jamaican, but I'm Black.
That's insane.
Like African American Black. I was like, I don't know how else to describe the different type of Black I am.
And then what did he say after that? After you said that?
He was just like a laugh off. Like he was just like, oh.
Silly me.
I can't.
It was like a silly me situation.
Or like when I've experienced something similar. Like when people ask me like, you know, what are you? And I'll say, oh, like I'm Jamaican and Puerto Rican. People would be like, oh, so you're not just Black. Okay, that's really cool. And I'm like, what's wrong with just being just Black? Or just being Black American? Like, why is that? Why? Because I'm Caribbean, or why because I'm half a Hispanic? Why does that make me more interesting? And I think we need to like, oh, what are you? Black? No, really. And it's like, just Black. Like, why is that, you know? So we got to change that too. You know, you're not more interesting because you're not mixed, you know, like
and so because of that whole aspect, so I would get really upset because I didn't want people to feel, I didn't want my sisters, I didn't want me, I didn't want my cousins who are dark skinned, any person that was darker than me or that wasn't mixed to feel like, oh, they were less than. So when people would be like, oh, you're just that. So not saying I don't still do that today. Like if people ask me, what am I say I'm Black. I don't say, oh, I'm Black and white. If they're like, oh, let's get into like, oh, like what's your butt? Like, okay, then we could like start diving into things. But I announce myself as Black and they're like, no, you can't just be just Black. Like I'm like, yeah, I am. And I'll say that because I want them to understand like that, like, yes, like being just Black can also look like this and it could look like this and it still looks fantastic either way. Like,
yes, you know, because there are Black, because you know, yes, that's a good point, because so you can be light skinned and not be mixed. And I think people think like in order to be Black, you have to look like me, you have to be dark skinned. Or she's light skinned, so she has, you know, she's mixed and she's this. And no, you can just be Black, you know, and that's cool too, and that exists. You know, you can be Black and have straight hair or have very loose curls and not be halfway. Yeah. So my parents always made sure to tell my younger sister and I how beautiful and intelligent we were and not to pay attention to the haters. I think my parents showing us documentaries, movies, and television shows with Black people in it and teaching us Black history definitely helped us a lot. Did your parents teach you guys to love the skin that you're in from a very young age?
I would say for me, um, it definitely wasn't like until up until like maybe like middle high school, they didn't explicitly like say things to make me like love my own skin. Like I always did. Like I never really was like insecure about it, or like I
Okay.
never like, especially from a young age, I always just kind of was just me or whatever. I didn't really think that I wanted to be like white or I wanted to be something else. But they definitely made it known that I was a like a Black boy and as African especially, like they made it clear to me. They didn't say anything like to, especially like they didn't specifically say to love my own skin, but they just kind of taught me about my culture, my family, who I
Okay.
was, and my identity, if that makes sense. So like it was kind of like, teaching me about where I come from, the food that we eat, the music that we listen to, or like, about my family. So like I was aware of like my identity as a Black person, but it wasn't like explicitly said through, media or movies or anything like that, really.
Okay.
So there was never any instances, I guess, of like self-hate, and then they never had to shut that down, if that makes sense.
I
So like
like
they kind
that.
of, yeah. So that never came up. Like, and I never came home from school being like, oh, I wish I was a white kid, or I never came home from school being like, somebody made fun of me for being dark, and then we had to have that conversation. It was kind of just they were on it early, from when I was young to show me, what it is to be an African boy, a Black boy, and then from then on, it was just kind of like, I think they showed me, um, movies. Well, when I was really little, it was mostly cartoons and stuff like that.
Okay.
So there was less of an exposure to actually just human beings in general because there's a lot of just cartoon characters. But once I started to watch shows that had people in them, um, I think I had already developed a sense of who I was beforehand. So like I've seen sometimes people have done studies or like have talked to people and say like all the shows that they watched had white people in them, and then it made them subconsciously like want to be white or something like that. That kind of never
Yeah.
happened to me because I didn't connect myself to those characters on the screen. Like I already knew like
Right. Like you
I
knew that
was
that was
myself and they were,
fictional and that
yeah,
you had a strong sense of pride in like your
yeah,
Blackness, your culture, and who you are as a yeah. And I think
yeah,
because of that strong cultural background, and I think because you've had such a diverse living environment, like
yeah,
you weren't in a white town for all your life, and the only
yeah,
Black people was like your family. I think that probably helped too. Like you lived in
exactly.
different space, you did live in different areas, and then you had like your family. Like I think for me, it was like I had a good cultural background at home, but it's
Yeah,
like my parents are working and I'm with white kids all day. So I'm like this much with white people and then this much with Black people. So it's
yeah.
kind of hard. And then I had to take, I think maybe like middle school or high school to be in a diverse environment. And then also low key, Trump running for president. It was like, oh, like why are all these white people saying such crazy stuff? So that like the more I realized how racist this country was, the more I started to love myself and my Blackness,
Yeah,
which is crazy. But I
yeah,
think that's what it was for me. What about you,
yeah,
Trinity?
Um, so I had the complete opposite experience.
Yeah.
I wish I'm jealous, Andrew, of yours. I wish I was confident in my own. I wouldn't say it's my parents' fault. They grew up in town. My dad grew up in the Bronx. My mom grew up in the nearest city in Hartford. They grew up in very high poverty places, low socioeconomic status. They both grew up in the projects,
Okay.
with parents in and out of their life. um, they wanted their kids to have the best possible resources available. We know that being, college, like the best possible resources are in towns with higher socioeconomic statuses. Who's in higher socioeconomic statuses towns? White people.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and that's how we ended up in the town that I was in. So I don't blame them for that because at the same time, it still made me who I am. But it did kind of instill in the beginning as almost self-hatred because I noticed and we kind of touched upon this before with like Black guys and them liking Black women or their opinions about Black women. Because of the town that I grew up in and the people that I was surrounded with, all the white boys, because they were the ones around, they liked the white girls. So I was like, well, why don't they like me? Like, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And that's the question that would start to pop in my head. And then when I got to high school, so my town, they had to bus kids in from that city because of
Okay.
like the lack of diversity, right? And so, but even though the kids that they bussed in, right, they were Black, they were Hispanic, they would still end up with the white girls. And I'd be like, well, what the hell? Like, we're like the same level right now, and y'all are still going for them. I'm confused. Like, what do they have that I don't have? And so that's when it started for me, with not loving myself. And I would go through perms. So my hair was like long, curly, great, whatever. This shit was broken off. It was not good. I used to it's so bad. I used to practice my smile in the mirror because I was like, I don't want people to like judge me with my lips.
Because it's like, what can I change? Okay, they don't like me, so how can I? Oh, that's what they like.
How
Okay,
can
how can I look like that? Yeah,
exactly. I would curve my lip in when I'd smile, so my lips would look thinner. So instead of just smiling regularly, like I do, like some yeah. Or
wow.
and then same with my eyebrows. You know, early 2000s, mid 2000s, like a lot of white people had very like really thinner eyebrows, and even in social media and TV, like you watch like One Tree Hill, like that was like a thing. Like they all had thin ass eyebrows. So I was like, okay, if this is what the guys want, let me get the guys what they want. And that was that. Like I plucked it off. If you saw these pictures of me, you'd think I look crazy. So no eyebrows, no lip, no hair, straight hair, lost the hair. It was all of that. So it definitely took, as you were saying, which I think is interesting, that it's all at that same fact in like that 2016 type of era when we were like, oh shit, like we're Black.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's a good thing. Yeah, it's we're cool, you know, and like
I
everyone
also
got hyper woke.
I think though it started off negatively because of why we realized that, because with Trayvon Martin. Because that's when I realized, I was like, what the something's wrong. Like I was so confused. Like I was like, what is happening? And then I really knew I was Black when Beyonce dropped Lemonade. I was like, all right, I'm Black. I gotta see Beyonce.
Okay, like the music.
Yeah,
the music at
like,
the time as well.
Yeah, okay, exactly. So that's when that album dropped. That's when Black Lives Matter movement like started and it was at its peak. And so sadly, when that was at its peak, that means police brutality was also at its peak. And all the lives lost. But it was just definitely a time where I was like, all right, something is off. And like, I know I have this privilege of being lighter skinned. Like I need to use my voice for something. I need to, somebody's going to listen to me, whether they're not going to listen to me that per second, someone will, if I keep speaking up loud enough. And I gained that label in high school in like 2015, 2016 of like that Black girl who won't stop preaching social justice crap, because I didn't care. My parents, they were like, you're going to put a target on your back. You can't do this at your high school. And I was like, I don't care. Like I'm down for the cause. Like I was like, nobody could tell me nothing. Like I'm walking in there, my fist in the air. Okay, Black power. Like nobody's telling me anything.
No, my parents definitely told me that too. Like don't be like Martin Luther King at your school. And I'm like,
and I was like, well, why not?
To.
And so that was my issue. I was like, well, why not? They're like, you're going to get a target. And I didn't understand really. I was like, what do you like? No, I don't care if I'm going to have a target. Like somebody has to have this. Like somebody has to do it. That's why Martin did it. Malcolm did it. Somebody's got to do it. So Triniti's going to do it.
Yes. No, like, I totally relate to that. I totally relate. Like as light-skinned Black people, when you hear maybe like another light-skinned person talk down on a dark-skinned Black person, has it been hard for you to call them out in the past? Or is it easy for you to like, don't say that, like that's dumb?
I think in the past, definitely it was difficult for me. In general, calling people out for anything was difficult. Even sometimes now, I still have a hard time with it sometimes, like depending on the topic. I have a hard time calling people out for stuff.
But or like where you are.
Yeah, but I would say now, if I hear a light-skinned person talking down on dark-skinned people, or like just Black people in general, if I know them, I will say something. If I don't know them, like if I'm literally just meeting the person now, or like, you know, it's like the first time I'm ever meeting this kid or whatever, maybe I'll just kind of just not talk to them ever again type of thing. Like I don't want to waste my breath. Like that's, I mean, I feel like I should talk about it, but sometimes I'm just like, I just met you. Like I'm not going to ever see you again type of thing. So I really try just to avoid that person. But if it's somebody like I know pretty well, or like even sometimes like I've just spoken to a couple times and I see that they've got some like, I'll challenge it. I'll be like, okay, so you said this thing just now, like about dark-skinned people or Black people. Like, why did you say that? Or like, prove it. You know what I mean? Like, prove it. And then, you know, then I'll challenge it. And I'd be like, well, I don't think like that, or I don't believe in that, or I know a dark skinned person who doesn't act that way, or who doesn't, whatever. So I just try to at least make the person think for themselves and realize that they're speaking based off of like biases and like, you know, conditioning and like
that implicit bias.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's more of just like not really an argument, but it's literally just being like, okay, think about what you just said. Like literally just think about it.
Right.
Like,
and have like a conversation and not be like, you're not taking the like aggressive approach. Like
no,
it's more like, oh, like why did you feel that was comfortable to say?
Because when you get somebody to think about what they said, like even for me sometimes, like I'll say something, or like I'll somebody will actually just make me think about what I just said, and I'm like, damn, okay, it's like, you know what I mean, now I'm like
yeah
whatever I have said is wrong for whatever reasons, instead of you just like arguing. And sometimes I do argue, like I actually get mad and like, you know, I get angry or whatever, but I feel like it's very effective, at least for me, when you just literally question somebody's statement, like just fundamentally, what made you say that, and where's your proof? And that's just like how I try to approach it. Like I try to avoid people like that anyways, like people who are extremely ignorant, or like people who like talk down on Black people, because I'm like, especially if you're Black, like what is good, like what, like how, like why, you know what I mean? So anytime I've met somebody who is Black and talks down on Black people, I'm beyond baffled. Like I'm always just like, what the hell? So already off that, like I just distance myself. But I'll say something first, like I'll like, you know, question and stuff like that.
I definitely think that so I didn't get Andrew's approach until I was more like probably the past 2.5 years. The first in high school when everything was at height, I was like the explode. Somebody says something incorrect. What the hell did you just say? Why'd you say that like that? Like, do you not understand this? You know what a microaggression is? Like, what's wrong with you? Like,
yeah, that was me too.
And that's the complete wrong approach, because that's when, okay, the stereotype once gets placed again about, oh, she's like the aggressive Black girl, the one who has an attitude all the time, the one yelling and whatnot. And then I'd be like, well, now I do have an attitude. Now I am gonna yell, because what the hell's wrong with you? It took me my positions here at Hofstra and some training in high school to actually get me to the point of questioning others, to make them just reflect upon themselves instead of me having to educate them. Don't get me wrong, I will still educate them, but it's more of asking them the questions for them to think in their brain. Oh, wait, why did I think that? Why did I say that in the first place? Because that's them unlearning. That's them understanding.
Exactly. Because I think if we are argumentative, we're not gonna make much progress. Like we have to have a conversation and make sure that the person understands where you're coming from, and then maybe try to understand where they're coming from. It's like, oh, why did you think that Black people, who told you that Black people act like this? Where did that come from? This is why I'm upset. This is why this is wrong. And then let's come to an understanding. I don't expect every Black person to have that level of patience and maturity.
And it's understandable. Like,
and it's understandable because we shouldn't be a teacher at work and at school and at club, and it's like we shouldn't be sitting down and having collegiate level conversations with everyone. But like, if we could just come with an amiable approach sometimes, or try to, then I think we can make some progress. Because if it's just yelling and cursing, it's only going to get worse, you know? So
especially the thing you said about being a teacher or whatever. Like I remember one time, this was like a couple of weeks after George Floyd was killed. So like there was like, you know, of course, riots and stuff like that. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was something going on with like All Lives Matter or something like that. Like people were saying All Lives Matter. And
I hate that. I'm sorry. I just hate that so much. It really makes me upset. Like genuinely.
It's such a joke.
And something happened where it came up. And basically two things happened. One, I was speaking to this white kid. He hits me up and he's like, yo, Andrew, like, could you explain to me why it's wrong to say All Lives Matter? I was like, bro, like literally just Google it. Like, please just Google it. Like, I was like, if you don't get it at this point, like, I don't know what to tell you. And this is like a pretty good, like, childhood friend of mine, like close friend. Like nowadays, not much, but like, you know, childhood friend. Right. And so I was like, honestly, like, you're my friend. Like, we've been friends for years and stuff like that. But like, bro, just Google it. Like, I don't have like
Google is free.
I don't want to sit down and have to try to explain to you. And then another time, like similar kind of situation where like a kid who's Black was basically saying like, you know, well, all lives matter. Yeah, all lives do matter. I was like, bro, that's not what the point is. So then we had a whole argument, long story short, like it was a whole thing. I had to cut the kid off, all this stuff because like he basically was just like, well, like, Black people don't make it better for ourselves because we be doing this and we doing that. And like,
Oh, I
we
hate
do,
that.
I don't
I'm
like that.
That's like another whole podcast episode in itself.
I was like,
Yes.
bro.
I don't, yeah.
This is a dude who was like also light skinned, so he also had light skin privilege. So he was clearly coming from a place of privilege without realizing it and saying like, well, I've done this and I've avoided like run-ins with the police, and like I've made friends with white people, and I was like, oh brother, like I was like, okay,
It's the coonery for me.
Yeah,
I feel like I can't call it like the coon episode. I feel like I can't call it that, but it's the coonery for me. Like I don't like that because
so I definitely called him out, and like it was getting nowhere, so we couldn't be friends anymore because of that. You know what I mean? So it's happened before where I've had to call people out for talking down and talking crazy.
How do you guys think we can put an end to colorism?
I say making it more public. So I feel as though, yes, it's in the media sometimes, but it's only ever in the media like every now and then between a couple of people, and it's always like the shade room type of deal or like stuff like that. But they never really blatantly say, oh, because of colorism. They'll just be like, oh, light skin, dark skin, whatever. I think actually like calling it for what it is what's most important. And like when people are on stage and they are performing and like they are doing these introductions and whatnot, like making it known like about the circumstance and what's going on in their lives and their loved ones' lives. I feel as though having more institutions or not even offices within institutions that do talk about such issues such as colorism is also very important, where we do like have programs around this and teaching people, okay, this is what it is, like this is how we can go about it, this is how to have like competent dialogue about it, and to how you were saying like battle colorism. It's definitely an ongoing process. I think that for us to actually not have that anymore, we have to get it out of our mind that white is the standard, right. The white man or the white female is the standard. I think
like
that's
white is right, getting rid of that.
Definitely starting there and then going forward. So
I like that. And for you, Andrew?
I think for me it's like a lot of unlearning. Like you have to like almost like decolonize your mind. Like literally you mentioned like all this, a lot of this, or if not all of it, is from like colonialism and like colonial like ways of thinking, like slavery and like white is right and like house slave versus the field slave and all that stuff. So I think it starts with baby steps. You have to like start somewhere small. Like first appreciate who you are as a Black person, and then start to realize that even within Blackness there's still like hierarchies of like colorism, because for me as a light-skinned person, it's important for me and other light-skinned people to be aware of colorism and that we benefit from it, but we also, in a way, for me as a light-skinned man, suffer from it too. So decolonizing our minds and like saying, okay, as light-skinned people, we have light-skinned privilege. Clearly, like first of all, you have to acknowledge the fact that there's light-skinned privilege, but then also move on and start looking at the other ways that it manifests itself and how we treat others. Like, do you treat your dark-skinned friends different from your light-skinned friends? Do you trust dark-skinned people less than light-skinned people and stuff like that? Think about how you act towards people and think about where that stuff is coming from. And then I think it's literally an unlearning process. Like do a lot of reading. I mean, if documentaries are there and you don't want to read, just watch documentaries and like talk to people and like there's even classes at our schools that have, stuff like that, deal with that type of stuff. Take classes and like attend seminars and attend like panel discussions and like watch podcasts or like listen to podcasts, whatever. Like there's so much stuff you can do to like unlearn it. So I think the biggest thing for me is like to make that effort and to like literally like unlearn it, because it's easy to just fall into like this bubble of, or this like brainwashing almost of just like following what people believe in colorism because of the media and how rappers portray women and stuff like that. So
right.
It's intentional. The point is that it has to be intentional and you have to go out and do it.
Right. So now time for some TCP rapid fire questions. You don't have to answer it quickly. I just call it that. But yeah. So the first one. Let me see. First one. Okay. What makes you laugh the most?
I would say It's
All right.
like,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
you're good. I would say my friends just have me like dead. I think it was my friends. And if it's not like my friends, probably like TikTok or something like that, like Twitter or TikTok.
Same.
My friend, it's gotta be my friends. Like it's just, they are so funny. So like, yeah.
And for you, Trinity?
Okay, so mine is under the influence, right, of drugs or alcohol. Not like, oh my God, not like opioids and shit. Like I'm just talking about like, okay, maybe a little dab pen, right? Funny
Okay.
TikToks before you go to sleep, like that type of shit. It has me fucking dying for no reason. It'll be funny as fuck, and there's nothing even funny about it. I'll just be dying. But also, yeah, my family and my friends.
I think you're like the first to say that. Everyone usually has like wholesome answer. That's funny.
That's
That's funny.
hilarious. Yeah.
You're like a funny drunk. You're like a laughing.
Yeah, no, I'm
humor.
always like laugh. It's like I realize it, and it's just, and then I think about it the next day. I'm like, what the fuck? Wrong with me? But it was
Like,
just
what did I say
funny
last
for
night?
no reason.
Yeah, I have had a lot of moments where I woke up and I was like, why did I say that or do that? Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, it'd be like that. It'd be like that. 3 things you're grateful for.
You can go first.
Okay. Health, my family. And I was thinking about this, trying to figure out the third one was like the okay. Can my dog be included in my family?
Yeah.
Okay, so my dog's gonna be part of my family, so that's not gonna be the third thing. So the third thing is gonna be my education.
Your education. I like that. And you, Andrew?
I would say, I was gonna say education, like the opportunities it brings and all that stuff. Family, of course. And also just like being able to, not like, how do I say it? Like just have to be able to like have the opportunities and the privileges I have outside of school, but like just in general, being healthy, as like Trinity said, and like, being happy and like being generally just things are going pretty good so far. So like just in general, things are like good.
Right.
So
Like
I
having
think,
a roof over your head, food,
yeah, stuff like that, food, clothes, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's important. What would you tell your younger self?
It's gonna be okay, shawty. Like you're gonna be fine. Be like, yes, I know that mental health, that depression, that anxiety, it's really kicking you with you, but you got it. Like it gets better, I promise. And it's gonna get really bad sometimes too, even when it's really good, but it's still gonna be okay, and you're still gonna make it through. Just keep pushing.
Yes, I love that.
I would say something very similar where I would tell my younger self to just let life take you where it takes you. Like stop stressing over things that might not matter tomorrow. Stop stressing about things that might not matter next year. Like just let life, like just live life. Literally just take any opportunity that comes your way. Like laugh, smile, like enjoy everything.
Ooh,
Romanticize your life too.
yeah.
Like if you're just eating in the dining hall, like make yourself a main character in a movie. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
No,
and like
definitely.
finding the balance between like taking it one day at a time, but you do want to plan ahead. Like if you have to study or you have to apply for an internship, like whatever.
Oh
like
yeah.
finding that balance. Like, okay, I want to enjoy this moment. Like be appreciative of the little things, but also like plan ahead and like like plan for your future and like make wise decisions. Find like
Yeah.
I agree
I
with
would
that.
definitely do way more of the, enjoy the moment while it's there. I didn't do that as a kid. And like now I think back and like parents are divorced and everything. And I'm like, wow, I'll actually never get that shit back. That's crazy. I'll never like have that again. Yeah. And I'll just be like, wow. And I really didn't even appreciate it that much. And I really took it for granted. So just really thinking back to not doing that.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
How old am I going to be? 26? I would say, okay, depends on what happens. So there's like 2 ways my life can go, right? So I'm either going to be medical school, about to be leaving medical school, or maybe I'll be like the next Beyonce or something. We can't limit ourselves here. So.
No, you can be a doctor. Is that what you want? And singer?
Yeah, that's like what I'm going to school for. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do both.
That's
it's gonna be a little tricky.
Meg graduated.
Yeah,
right. You can do both. Maybe do one first, then the other, or But yeah, you can do both. Multifaceted. I'm here for it. And for you, Andrew?
I think for me, so I think I'll have So I'm trying to go to grad school. So I'll be done with grad school by then. I'm hoping I'll have a job by then, like an entry-level job of some sort, maybe. I'm studying like right now international relations, as you know, but like I want to go into studying like environmental stuff and like sustainability and stuff like that,
Oh,
like
that's really
climate,
cool.
those
Like to
types of
be like
things.
a lawyer, you think?
Like sort of like more of like a, how do you explain? Like it's like working with like non-government organizations or nonprofits and stuff like that, or even maybe the US government. I don't know. I don't love the US government, but whatever happens, but basically just working to like help like people adapt to climate change, like helping countries to adapt to climate change
Oh, that's
and
really
like
cool.
stuff
That's really
like
cool.
that. Like being like, you know, because a lot of, especially because my region is studying like, is Africa. So like a lot of those countries are vulnerable. It's like floods, droughts, famines. So helping those countries, you know, um, be more adaptable and like be more prepared for like climate crises, like a hurricane, for example. So hopefully I
Right,
get a job
right.
in that type of field
I
by
love that.
then.
Okay.
If not, maybe I'll be, you know, doing something else, but like getting work experience regardless, type of thing. But yeah, hopefully I'm still healthy. Hopefully things are still good. Hopefully my family's all good, all that stuff.
And the last rapid fire question, what would you name this current chapter of your life?
I had the same answer I had, but I was having a conversation with my friend. It was like beginning of freshman. No, maybe it was okay before now, right? And I remember I was like, "Yo, this is because I or no, it was like a BuzzFeed quiz. That's what it was."
Okay.
And, like, oh, and the question was, "What would you name this? Like, what would your if you had a title of your life or a book, or something like that? Like, what would it be?"
Yeah.
And that was one of the options, and I pressed that one. I was like, "Wow, that's really my life." All right, so the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's fire.
Okay. I like that. I like that. And for you, Andrew?
Let me think. I would say I would call it, I don't know, maybe a cooler name if I could think of one, but like I would say this is a transition. So maybe the metamorphosis or something like that, like the
Ooh, I
transition.
like that.
I don't know.
Okay.
Something
Okay,
like that,
yeah.
because right now it's like I'm stepping out of who I used to be like when I was younger, and I'm seeing myself kind of going to somebody else. Cause like I was talking to my friends the other day, like how I'm starting to like disconnect to how I used to think when I was a kid, or like when I was like in high school or early college years. Like I used to relate to that a lot. Like I used to be very immature, very petty, you know, I was used to like very wild person, but now I'm starting to see that I'm much more mature, take things slowly. Like I try to, you know, be more, look out for people and stuff like that. So like I think that's like the metamorphosis. Like I'm just maturing and like growing into like who I'm supposed to be in the
I
future.
thank you guys so much for having this conversation with
Thank
me. I
you.
totally appreciate it.
Thank
I
you so
think,
much.
you
It's
know,
great.
conversations like these are so important, and I hope that it gets better for us, because I think we as Black people, we need to be united. I think, you know, Jewish people, Hispanic people, Asian people, I think they got it, you know, and I think we need to be
Know what you mean.
I feel like we need to be like that, you know, like united and have like a common goal. If we could
Yeah.
just, you know, progress towards that, I think things will get better.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell people where they can follow you guys?
Oh, should I like just say my name on thingy? So my Instagram,
Like your Instagram username.
okay. So it's Andretti, so ANDRRETTI.
Awesome,
That's my
awesome.
Instagram.
And Trinity.
Cool. Okay, everybody. It's my name, Trinity J White, TRINITI, letter J, white like the color. That's my Instagram, that's my Twitter, and I think that's also my Facebook.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And you said, you make music. Do you have anything
Mhm.
coming out soon?
Yes, I will have some things coming up shortly. I'm very excited. So this will be my first single coming out. We're hoping to start video shoots and everything, because I want to be able to get all the promo done. So
Okay.
once the promo's done, then I'm gonna start, releasing the promo, and then then drop the song. So let's hope everything goes on time and according, and I can get everything that I need for this. And we'll drop hopefully December.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
guys.
from there.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, be sure to leave a rating for the Cervantes podcast on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the Cervantes podcast YouTube channel, and click the notification bell up top so you're notified whenever I upload a new episode. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.